It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Appreciate you riding with us. Thanks so much for being here. If you're catching us live on our streaming service on our website, welcome, and we're glad to have you. You can catch us live streaming every morning at americasvoicenow.org. You can also catch our live audio podcast on americasvoicenow.org. And you can also catch us live on patriotfb.com, live, 8 a.m. Central Time. And if you haven't yet joined Patriot FB, I strongly encourage you to do so. It's a patriotic Facebook-like website. I'm not the only show on there. Following me is Conservative Junction Radio with J.J. McCartney, Midnight Patriots on there, Cowboy Logic Radio's on there, and there's others. So if you want an excellent opportunity to meet like-minded patriots who are intent on restoring our nation, please join us there. I'd like to just kind of thank you folks for a year of 2013 in which America's Voice Now has grown substantially. We have had a number of changes to our program. In 2013, we had some wins and we had some losses. One of our wins, one of our losses was one of our stations was sold to a new investor, a new owner, and they changed the format from news talk to music. And we lost that station, but we were picked up by 99.3, which is KUNQ out of Houston, Missouri. They have a huge broadcast area, and so we're proud to be with those folks and be on that program as well. That was a win for us. We also built and created our own radio broadcasting station and video studio, and we did that courtesy of the folks over at Victory Church in West Plains. If you want a great family church to go to, folks, that would be a good one. Outstanding organization and some great patriot folks there who are also of faith-minded conservatism, and they're not afraid to speak out about the political situation that we find ourselves in our country. You know, I very rarely ingest religion into politics because there's that old rule that says, there's two things you never talk about at a party, right? One is politics and the other is religion, and I hit the politics thing really hard. So that tells me that, to interject religion in on top of that would probably not be a great idea. But, and you know what? I never do that, and I'll tell you why I don't. I don't want to fracture our audience, and I don't want to segment us down by having somebody say, well, he believes in this, and my particular religious denomination doesn't, or, they say in my religious denomination we can't sing, or we can't drink, or we shouldn't do this, or we shouldn't do that, or we can do this and we can do that. And I don't want to separate ourselves that way. The truth is we're all Americans. This is America. It is the United States of America. And everyone in it, irrespective of your religious belief, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Catholic, whether you are a Muslim, whether you are a Buddhist, it doesn't make any difference. Whether you are a Shinto, you should be locking elbows with other great Americans saying, we are here, first and foremost, to preserve and restore our nation to liberty and freedom. And then after that, we can separate on those other issues which are divisive to us, but always with respect towards, hey, listen, it's not my place to tell you what to believe. It's not my place to tell you what to think or how to act. It's not my place to tell you who to sleep with or what to ingest into your body. It's my place only to make sure that you have that right, whatever it is. The truth is, I know there's a lot of people that say to me, well, you should take a stronger stance against. Listen, I don't really care about who you sleep with. If you want to be gay, that's your business. If you want to smoke pot, that's your business. You want to stick a needle in your arm and ruin your own life, that's your place. It's not my place to tell you what to do. I'm very libertarian in that arena. It's not my place. I do what's right for me. But all of us need to be on the same page when it comes to restoring our nation to freedom and liberty so that we all have the right to win or lose, to succeed or make mistakes, to fail if necessary in order to educate and learn more about who we are and what we should be doing. And that's a problem that our current government does not believe. They want you to do as they tell you to do. That is always a recipe, ladies and gentlemen, for disaster. Okay, we're going to cover 4 topics today, and I shouldn't have wasted so much time on a blah, blah, blah injection in the first part here, because the Council on Foreign Relations is the subject of this morning's assault. And I say that with intent. You know, most people don't even know who the Council on Foreign Relations are. And by the way, just for the record, let me just set the show up. We're going to talk about CFR in the first segment. We're going to talk about the NSA and some of the newest information out about them in the second segment. We're going to talk about gun rights in the third segment because, as you know, the end of 2013, the beginning of 2014 heralds a new age in states like Connecticut and California, because those states are now making you register your weapons. And everybody knows, even though you may not want to admit it, that registration ultimately leads to confiscation. And that's what this is about. And then our fourth segment is going to be Benghazi. Now, I got to tell you, the CFR thing is a long-winded hit because there's a ton of information you really need to know. But for the record, if I run out of time on it, I may drag it over into the next segment and we'll just push on. And if I have to leave Benghazi off the end, I will. I was just frustrated about what I heard the other day with that New York Times article. And Trey Gowdy had a great quote out there. So maybe I'll just hit it at the end. But here's the point. The Council on Foreign Relations. I want you to know who they are. Because the truth is that the Council on Foreign Relations is truly the true enemy of liberty and freedom in America. And you've never even heard about them. I'm wagering that a significant number of people who are listening to my voice right now, when I say CFR, they don't know what that means. When I say the Council on Foreign Relations, they say, yeah, I've kind of heard of that before, but I really don't know who they are. Well, yesterday I posted up on our Facebook and website and all the other places out there that I post. I put stuff up there about their membership roster list. And the reason I want you to know who they are is because they're the best kept secret in American history. The Council on Foreign Relations, who they are, what is it? Why haven't I heard of them? Well, it's funny that you should ask. Because if you want to know who really, truly runs the world, I'm going to tell you this morning. It is the number one, the most insidious, the most dangerous, the most treacherous, globalist, New World Order, elitist organization on the planet. It is loaded and filled with a membership roster that will stun you. Their members own every and or run. Now they recognize that sometimes these are corporations that are run by boards and so forth, right? So they run or own every major corporation in the nation. They run every media outlet, including, I might add, Fox News. The departments of state. They run every Department of State. They took over the Department of State around 1941. Every member of the Department of State, every head of state, every Secretary of State in the United States since 1941 has been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. They run every central bank in the planet, not just in the United States, not just the Federal Reserve. They run every central bank on the planet. Every international organization that is of any substance, every environmental group, the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, the Audubon, all of those groups. All of the extra constitutional administrative agencies, the FAA, the FCC, the FDA, the ATF, all of those people, or at least their heads, or either are members or are influenced by the membership. Every cabinet of every president, including every president since Roosevelt, with one or two minor exceptions, including Reagan and Obama's not a member. Now, don't get yourself all bent out of shape and say, my goodness, Ronald Reagan, he wasn't a member. There you go. Let me tell you something. Reagan wasn't a member, but every member of his cabinet was. Don't fool yourself, folks. Don't drink your own Kool-Aid. Every president since Roosevelt, with the exception of Reagan and Obama. All the military contractors. Every corporation that is a military contractor of any significance, and we're talking all the big names, but all the little names too. Every major and minor bank. Did you hear what I just said? Every major bank, all of the investment banks, all the too big to fails, and every minor bank, every international and every domestic conglomerate. You want to talk about the agri-tyrants? Let me tell you, Dow Chemical, Monsanto, all of these companies, Carrefour, all of them, whether they're domestic or international, they are either run and or controlled by the CFR. All the data companies, Yahoo, Google, AOL, Facebook, every one of them, they're all members or they are influenced and controlled by members. All the news media, every piece of news media that you hear on a major MSM or MOP, right, Ministry of Propaganda news organization, is a member. That includes all print, that includes all television, and all, or I should say most major market radio stations. Every education publisher, every one. Every university, every college, their boards are made up of CFR members. In many cases, it's the dean and the heads of the universities as well. All of the lobbying firms, every firm on K Street in Washington, D.C., is run and or controlled by CFR. Most nonprofit foundations in the country, most of the big ones, the Cancer Society, all of them groups, all influential entities that exist. By the way, that includes the largest churches in the nation, including most of their headquarters associations. I know I'm going to get a ton of email about this. I don't really care, because my job is to tell you the truth. Your job is to take that truth and act with it. But my job is to expose it to you and then let the chips fall where they may. The truth is, most of the major denominational organizations in the country are either influenced by or have members of their higher echelon sitting on the Council on Foreign Relations. They have infiltrated every major national policy organization, every medical association, every chamber of commerce, both state, your state chambers, your federal, your national chamber of commerce, all of them. They control everything that you see, everything that you hear, read, think, watch, ingest, smell, taste, eat, and feel. Ladies and gentlemen, the true enemy of America and the true enemy of freedom and liberty across the planet is the Council on Foreign Relations. How do I say that? What makes me have the hubris to make a statement like that? Well, the leaders are composed of 36 different officers. It costs $50,000 to be a President's Circle member, $25,000 to be a basic member. The way that the CFR works, and by the way, the CFR was exposed a long time ago in two books, which I encourage you to read. One is called The Invisible Government. The Invisible Government. Now, this book was written by Dan Smoot, and I believe he published this back in, 1960-something or other. 1962, by Dan Smoot. It's called The Invisible Government. I can't urge you strongly enough to get a copy of this. When you read about this, and it's almost entirely based upon the CFR and how their origins began, you'll be stunned. In fact, you won't be stunned, you'll be angry. Another book that I encourage you to get is called None Dare Call It Treason. Now, this was written by John Stormer. He was the chairman of the Missouri Federation of Young Republicans, and a member of the Republican State Committee of Missouri. This is back when these people actually cared, when the people in government were actually aligned with their party's goals and ideas. There's a quote on the back of this. All right, I'm not going to get into it. Here's the point. The point is that these people were exposing this stuff back in the 50s and the 60s, and this was written in 1964. By John Stormer. None Dare Call It Treason. Now, there are other books by these guys as well, and I'm not slighting anything else. I'm just telling you that the CFR is prominently referenced in these books. The Invisible Government is probably the most scathing treatment of the CFR. It explains their history from inception, and for the record, for those of you who don't know, the instigator, if you will, or the guy who created the Council on Foreign Relations, was, well, let me rephrase that. The guy who it was created under was Colonel Edward House. Now, for those of you who don't know who that was Woodrow Wilson's chief of staff. And in fact, Woodrow Wilson at one point said, "We are of two minds regarding House." House, by the way, was a dedicated socialist. He wrote books about it in a fictional format, but they were books nonetheless. And if you want to understand and be educated about what's really happening in our nation, you need to understand our history, because that's how we've arrived where we've arrived. In other words, we got here because of a lot of the events that have occurred over the last 100 years. Now, the original concept of House was a group called the Study of International Affairs. They met originally in Paris, and then they came home and incorporated the Council on Foreign Relations in 1921. They were founded and funded by a group of organizations, including the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation and many others. The board of directors in the Council on Foreign Relations today, and I'm not sure, I have to look on and just check the details of this, if David Rockefeller is still sitting there. Isn't that interesting? Originally funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and is currently still run by them. So I just want you to get a couple of ideas of some of the players here, because the board of directors is some pretty stunning folks. Now, granted, this changes over time, and I'm pulling this from Wikipedia, and I don't know what the date of this was, and it doesn't even matter, because if you read the list off of their website, which I've also given you in the links, and I'll give you again in the YouTube links if this is your first time catching this, the list of the people and the corporations that are members of this organization read like a who's who of everybody and anything that has any influence over any policy in the United States of America. I can't go through all of the names because there are literally thousands upon thousands of them. But if you go to this first link I gave you in Wikipedia, all you got to do, by the way, is type in members of the Council on Foreign Relations and click on the Wikipedia link. But if you were to go to that link and you click on the names of each of these people, it will give you a little synopsis of who they are. And then the board of directors, it kind of tells you, well, Stephen Friedman, former chairman of the Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. Martin Feldstein, economics professor, Harvard University. Kenneth Duberstein, former White House chief of staff. Bill and Melinda Gates, NBC Nightly News, Atlantic Media Corporation, Princeton University, Northwestern University. Madeleine Albright, former Secretary of State. John Abizaid, Commander-in-Chief, United States Central Command. Are you listening to some of the names here? Because these people are the organizations and the groups that make up this group, this organization. These are the people that have influence over every aspect of government, which therefore has control over every aspect of your life. They have control over not-for-profit groups that manipulate and sway and press and push and skew the realities of our world. What you don't know is how many of these people are currently, people I remember seeing, and this is just their board of directors, by the way. I remember seeing, a past history list, by the way, at one point in time, and I'm sure it's available. I just have to find it for you. Or better yet, do your own homework and you find it. And look at the influential number of people who have sat on either the board or as members of the CFR. Stephen Friedman, former Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. Ann Fudge, Young and Rubicam. I'm just going to read you the names because you may not the names of the companies or the organizations, because you may not recognize the individual names. The Blackstone Group, Claremont McKenna College, Young and Rubicam. That's a accounting firm. John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, Kohlberg, Kravis, Roberts and Company, Deputy Director of Intelligence, Kennedy School of Government. Hey, guess where most of your politicians come from? Yeah, Caterpillar. Peter G. Peterson Foundation, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colin Powell. Penny Pritzker, Pritzker Realty. The Carlyle Group, another real estate organization, and another huge investment fund. International Rescue Committee. FedEx. Frederick Smith, the CEO. Former ambassadors. Clark and Weinstock. The Christine Todd Whitman, the former governor of New Jersey and the former administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. Fareed Zakaria, editor at large, Time Magazine. Used to be a reporter on Communist News Network. The founders. These are the corporate membership. These are the groups that really influence everything because they are the true insiders. And the CFR works like on a ripple format. We're going to run out of time, so I'm going to drag this into the second segment. The way it works is that there's an inside circle and then a slightly outer circle and a slighter outer circle and an outer circle and an outer circle and so forth and so on. You get the idea. The true inside circle are the founders in the president's circle. And these people, the rest of the outer groups who, believe that they're involved in policy making and decision don't recognize, I don't think, the true extent. But you'll understand it when you read the founders list. Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs, Hess Corporation, J.P. Morgan Chase, McKinsey & Company, and NASDAQ. Wow. Just imagine the influence that this group has. Now, this is accurate as of June 7th, 2013. Their president's circle is Alcoa, American Express, Barclays, BlackRock, Bloomberg, BP, Oil, Bridgewater Associates, CA Technologies, Citigroup, Coca-Cola, Credit Suisse, Dell, Deutsche Bank, DynCorp, ENI, Fortress Investment Group, Golden Tree, Guardsmark, Kingdon Capital Investment, Kohlberg Kravis Roberts and Company, Lazard Investment Bank, Lockheed Martin Corporation, Mars Incorporated, McGraw-Hill, MetLife, Moody's Corporation, Morgan Stanley, New Media Investments, NRG Energy, Parsons Corporation, Reliance Industries Limited, Shell Oil, Soros Fund Management, Standard Chartered Bank, Toyota Motors North America, and Veritas. Listen to that list of that roster of names. If the first group and the founders aside didn't really get your attention, this group should. And this is only the tip of the iceberg, folks. We're going to run out of time. We got 18 seconds before the bumper kicks in. When we come back, I'm going to go through some more of these names because when I finish, you're going to be stunned at the influence that these organizations and groups carry. It is truly amazing. And most people have no idea this organization even exists. I cannot encourage you strongly enough to do your homework, do your due diligence, understand what this group is, who they are, what they represent, and how much control and power they have over you. Remember that their influence is based on their desire to improve end share results. That's why we've turned into a corporatocracy, a.k.a. fascism. We're going to return in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. We will shortly have a listen line for those who have no way to catch us live on the internet. You'll just be able to dial us with your phone and listen to the entire program. We'll be right back. All right. We're back. Now, I've said to you that this organization controls everything that you know, everything that you see, everything you read. In the earlier list there, which was in the President's Circle group, the companies that are influencing your children through their schooling and through all of their educational years are all part of this group here. And I don't think, if you were to sit down and look at the influence that these groups have on not only your present circumstance, but the number of children that are currently in school where they are working hard to indoctrinate them, to influence them, to, and I use the term literally, brainwash and mind control your children, to make them not into independent, self-reliant, self-governing individuals, but into mindless automatons. Why? Well, Bill Gates let it slip when he was talking about Common Core recently, in which he said they want every student to be a willing worker consumer. It's because they generate profit from that. All right, I want to take a quick second, and I just want to say thank you to our friends over at the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Store. They're at number 2 Court Square. Sam Miller is the owner there. He's a great guy, and he's a staunch patriot, ex-vet, or not an ex-vet, a vet. Their address is number 2 Court Square. They're in West Plains. You can find them right on the square in West Plains. Their phone number is 417-257, get a hold of this, folks, 1776. You got to love that. The phone number for the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop is 417-257-1776. I love it. Also, that is the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop is directly behind Wits End Classic Barbershop. Now, Jason is the barber over there, and the two of these guys are partners in the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop. Jason is an old-time barbershop where you can slip in there, and you feel like you just step back into a barbershop from the 40s or the 50s. There's a checkerboard there. The chairs are like antique barber chairs. The feeling that you get when you go in there is just awesome. And there's people in there, and it's just like the old days going into the barbershop where you sit down and have a nice conversation about all different things. You don't want to go there when I'm there because I invariably drag the conversation into politics, and I've actually converted a few people, but I've had a few people that didn't like it. Too bad. My job is to educate, even when you don't want it. Make sure that you visit those folks, and when you do, tell them that Mike from America's Voice Now sent you. Jason cuts hair for $10, folks. He cuts my hair about once a week. $10. Can't beat that with a lead pipe. He'll even do a straight razor job on you if you want an old-fashioned straight razor with shaving cream and the whole 9 yards. So anyway, go to visit them. Patriot Cigar and Tobacco at 2 Court Square, West Plains, on the square in West Plains. Also, make sure that you visit our friends over at the Battery Station. They are at number 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains, Missouri. They ship domestically and internationally. They're the largest distributor of batteries and battery-supplied products in the country. 417-257-7799. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. And they are very, very good and patriotic Americans. They're dear friends of mine. And I strongly encourage you to patronize their facilities there and make sure that you let them know that Mike from America's Voice sent you down there. When you walk in there, say, hey, Mike from America's Voice sent me over here. That's how they know that their advertising works. And by the way, it makes them want to, extend and do even more with us. Also, make sure that you contact Jason Henry if you need law services. Excellent services for criminal services, including federal, by the way. Very, very few federal attorneys in our geographic area. You generally have to go to Springfield, 100 miles away to get a federal attorney. If you've got a gun case, he specializes in 922G gun, felon in possession gun cases. Does a lot with criminal law. Everything from the plain Jane DUI all the way up to the far more extensive things, firearms, drugs, and things like that. He's an excellent attorney. He's at number 10 Court Square, again on the square in West Plains. 417-256-4100. I encourage you to get a hold of Jason. He also does personal injury things as well, but his primary focus is really the criminal law, and he's very, very good at it. Okay. I want you to go through this list with me because I got to tell you, folks, I don't know how many other companies could possibly have. And of course, the CFR will tell you that they're an agency and an organization that doesn't have, major influence. And but if they didn't, why would all these corporations pay this kind of money to be members? Why would they utilize this to lobby and influence government in their own best interest if they weren't benefiting from it? Ace Limited, Airbus America, Allied World Assurance Company, American International Group, Anglo-American, Apollo Management, Aremco Services Company, Arriva, Arnhold, and Bleichschroeder Holdings. Not quite sure who that is. Arnold and Porter, LLP, American Telephone and Telegraph, a.k.a. AT&T, Baker Nye Advisors, Baldwin Gottschalk, Bank of New York Mellon, BASF, Bingham McCutcheon, Blackstone Group, Boeing, Booz Allen Hamilton, Bunge Limited, Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, Caterpillar, Caxton Association, Cigna Health Insurance, Cisneros Group of Companies, CIT Group, Cleary, Gottlieb, Stein and Hamilton, CNA Financial Corporation, ConocoPhillips, Continental Properties, Control Risks Group, Corsair Capital, Covington and Burling, Craig Drill Capital Corporation, Credit Agricole Corporate and Investment Bank, John Deere and Company, Deloitte, the accounting firm. It used to be Deloitte and Touche, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, Duke Energy, Economist Intelligence Unit, Edelman Financial Field, Energy Intelligence Group, Equinox Partners, Estee Lauder, Expedia, FedEx, Freeport, McMoran, Copper and Gold, Future Pipe Industries, General Atlantic, General Electric, Gibson Dunn and Crutcher, GlaxoSmithKline, Google, Granite Associates, Greenberg Traurig, Hitachi, Houlihan Lokey, IBM Corporation. You notice in some of these names that you deal with, a lot of these are, and you may have an involvement in some way, shape, or form with many of these companies and may not even know it. Some of these companies do things like they're the people who monitor and handle your 401k investments, or they're the people that own the company that you work for and you don't even know it. Indus Capital Partners, InvestCorp International, Invus Group, Itochu International, Jacobs Asset Management, Kroll, McAndrews and Forbes Holdings, Mannheim LLC, Marsh and McLennan Companies, Marubeni America Corporation, MBIA Insurance Corporation. That's the company that provides insurance for bank accounts. Mead Westvaco Corporation, Mercantil Servicios Financieros. My Spanish isn't so good. Merck and Company, Microsoft, Milbank, Tweeden, Hadley, and McCloy. Sounds like Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Mitsubishi Corporation America, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Mitsui, Moore Capital Management, News Corporation. Guess who that is, folks? News Corporation. Let's see, they own, that's right, Fox News. Oh, and that's right, the Wall Street Journal, too. Yeah. Northern Trust, Northrop Grumman, New York Stock Exchange, Euronext, Occidental Petroleum, Olayan Group, Palantir Technologies, PepsiCo, Pfizer, Coca-Cola's in there too. Controlled opposition, kind of like Democrat, Republican. Yeah, same thing. Pfizer, PricewaterhouseCooper, Prudential Financial, Raytheon, Rothschild, North America. Where have I heard that name before? Oh, that's right. Salesforce Corporation, Salesforce.com, Inc., excuse me. You know all that customer base that you have in your Salesforce.com account? Yeah. Oh. You mean they can see all that stuff because it's sitting in their databases? Yeah. Sandalwood Securities, Sigular Guff Company, Silver Lake Partners, Simpson, Thatcher, and Bartlett, Sony Corporation of America, Standard & Poor's, Sullivan and Cromwell. Notice that, by the way, that Standard & Poor's and the other rating agencies always seem to rate everything much better than it is, and they always miss the cues that something is about to crash through the floor. But, all the people who are the big investors all seem to slip out just at the right moment. Isn't that funny? Sullivan and Cromwell, T. Rowe Price, Tata Group, Telefonica International, Thiel Capital, Thomson Reuters. Reuters is probably one of the biggest news organizations in the country, on the planet, in fact. TIAA CREF. That is a union organization. Time Warner. Time Warner owns AOL, folks. Tishman Speyer Properties, Total SA. I could come up with an awful lot of funny things to tie to Total SA's initials, but I'm going to leave that to your imagination. U.S. Chamber of Commerce. What did I tell you before about Chambers of Commerce? Ever wonder why the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is pushing so hard for immigration? Yeah. UBS, one of the biggest banks in the world. Volkswagen Group. Vornado Realty Trust. Walmart. Warburg Pincus. Isn't it interesting that Warburgs and the Warburg family were one of the original founders of the Federal Reserve System? The Warburg brothers, and if you don't know who the Warburg brothers are, type it into a browser. It's Warburg. When you read about these two nefarious monsters, you will be stunned. Western Union, WPP, Wyoming Investment, Xerox, Ziff Brothers Investment, Zurich Insurance Group. And some of the associate partners here are AARP. Now, I wonder why it is that AARP pushed the Medicare and Obamacare programs so doggone. Oh, that's right. They're a member of the CFR, so therefore they are so heavily influenced, they did the government's bidding for them to all of the aged Americans who are members. They weren't really interested in making sure that they protected their members' best interest. They were interested in making sure that they pushed the government's agenda. Bianca D'Italia, Hemispheric Partners. If that's not an ominous-sounding name, I don't know what it is. Hemispheric Partners. See, I don't know all these companies. Japan Bank for International Cooperation. Oxford Analytica. Now, just some prominent folks that are members. Roger Ailes. Oh, wait a second. He works for News Corp, and he's the chairman and the CEO of Fox News. Isn't that just special? Roger Ailes. And his boss, Rupert Murdoch, the owner of News Corp, which owns Fox News. And Roger is the chairman and CEO of Fox News, and he is a member in good standing of the Council on Foreign Relations. Madeleine Albright, Lamar Alexander, Elliot Abrams, Morton Abramowitz, John Abizaid, Michael Adams, John Anderson. These are individuals, by the way, just so you're... I'll try to pull some of the more prominent ones out because we're down to about 10 minutes. Lamar Alexander, by the way, was the Secretary of Education under Bush, former senator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Elliot Abrams was the former State Department official under Reagan and Bush. John Abizaid is the U.S. Army general and former head of CENTCOM. John Anderson, former Republican/independent congressman. Now, if that is not kind of an oxymoron, kind of like jumbo shrimp and baby grand piano, I don't know what is. Let's see. Anthony Clark, international lawyer and academic. Academic. Howard Baker, United States Senate, White House Chief of Staff under Reagan, and the husband of Nancy Kesselbaum Baker. James Baker, Secretary of State under Bush, Secretary of the Treasury under Reagan, White House Chief of Staff to President Reagan and George Bush. Isn't that just special? Thurbert Baker, former Democratic Party Attorney General, State of Georgia. Michael Barnes, former U.S. Democratic Congressman from Maryland and the president of the Brady Campaign Against Gun Violence. Why is it that these pesky guys just can't take the gun thing? Oh, that's right, because when you have firearms, you are capable of defending yourself and your country. That's right, I forgot all about that little detail. And we know from history that every country that has been stripped of their ability to own firearms always falls under a totalitarian, authoritarian regime. You think there might be a connection there? I mean, just tell me, what do you think? Yeah, I thought so. Charlene Barshevsky, United States Trade Representative. Former, of course. Now she's just a lobbyist for sale. Evan Bayh, former Democratic U.S. Senator and the 46th governor of Indiana. Peter Bergen, journalist. Oh, really? A journalist? A member of the Council on Foreign Relations? You mean trying to steer the news one direction or another? He's also a national security analyst for Communist News Network. I mean CNN. Joe Biden, 47th Vice President of the United States. Soon to be president if we impeach Obama, which probably wouldn't be good for us, but oh well. Josh Bolton, Chief of Staff under George Bush. Sandy Berger, United States National Security Advisor under Bill Clinton. Warren Beatty, actor, film producer, director. Jeffrey Bukes, president of Time Warner. Stephen Biddle, a theorist, setting U.S. counterinsurgency policy. Let's see. Stephen Biddle is a theorist who sets U.S. counterinsurgency policy for the United States of America. So let's see. Why would a non-governmental organization have a theorist who writes policy for the federal government of the United States of America that determines what our counterinsurgency policy ought to be in foreign nations and domestically here at home? I just cannot imagine it. Michael Bloomberg, former governor of New York, and owner and founder of Bloomberg, the media conglomerate, that same group. Max Boot, military historian and foreign policy expert. Bill Bradley, former Democratic senator from New Jersey and an NBA Hall of Fame basketball player. The founder of the Eurasia Group and the president, Ian Bremmer. You see, here's the problem, folks. Lael Brainard, Undersecretary of the Treasury for International Affairs. When you see these names and the influence that they have, Bill Brock, the 50th chairman of the Republican Party, the 8th U.S. Trade Ambassador, and the 18th United States Secretary of Labor under Reagan, and a former Republican U.S. Senator from Tennessee. Boy, how many party slots has he held? And all while being influenced by the corporatocracies that run and own and control America for their own betterment and profit. Does it begin to sound to you like maybe these corporations basically have the wherewithal and the ability to influence government to create policies that are actually in the best interest of corporations, and then to utilize their police power to enforce those on unwitting Americans? That's what it sounds like to me. And so when you begin to look at the level and the insidious involvement of how many people here are in what positions they've run, what have been the things that focused and directed and pushed our country one way or another? All of the social issues, all of the international issues, which, by the way, our President George Washington strongly told us not to get involved in. Erin Burnett, journalist and an anchor at Communist News Network. CNN. Herbert Walker Bush, George, 41st President of the United States. Tom Brokaw, NBC. Howard Berman, Democratic Party U.S. Congressman from California. Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Group. Paul Bremer, diplomat. Edgar Bronfman, member of the Bronfman dynasty, president of the World Jewish Congress. Now, isn't that funny? He's a member of the World Jewish Congress, the president, in fact. He's a member of the Bronfman dynasty, and he sits on a policy group that influences U.S. policy about Israel. Just makes you wonder. Ethan Bronner, former foreign editor for the New York Times. You think by any chance that there may be, even the slightest risk that a journalist might be influenced by the people that they congregate with? Yeah, I thought so. Zbigniew Brzezinski, the 10th United States National Security Advisor under President Jimmy Carter. Now, if you don't know who Zbigniew Brzezinski is, or you barely remember him, he was some kind of a vague memory in your mind, I would strongly encourage you to look him up, because this guy is a flippin' monster. Yeah, he advocates world control, the New World Order, a global government. He advocates things like forced abortions, forced sterilizations. He's a real cherry, this guy. He actually makes a guy like Soros, who just has money, but this guy has influence, look like, just that pesky pain in the butt down the street. Stephen Breyer, United States Supreme Court Justice. Now, let's see. Let's think about that for a minute. Why would we have a Supreme Court Justice who is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and he's making decisions about the most important aspects in our country, including how they affect us constitutionally, internationally, domestically, socially, religiously? I wonder if there might be a conflict of interest there. Nah, I must be just paranoid. Hold on a second. Let me take my tinfoil hat off. No, I think I'm going to just keep it on. Jonathan Bush, healthcare CEO, son of Jonathan Bush, the senior, brother of NBC entertainment reporter Billy Bush. Sanford Bishop, Democratic Party, United States Congressman from Georgia. David Boren, former Democratic U.S. Senator from Oklahoma and president of the University of Oklahoma. Isn't it funny that all these people who sit in Congress are members of the Council on Foreign Relations, where all of these corporations create these policies that affect... Oh, I see. Jimmy Carter, former president, of course, of the United States. Thank God he's former. Well, I don't know. Actually, Carter might have been an improvement over our current president. At least he was an American with a real birth certificate. Dick Cheney.
Darth Vader. U.S., I am your father. You will do as I say. Come to the dark side.
Frank Carlucci, 16th Secretary of Defense, 15th U.S. National Security Advisor under Ronald Reagan, 13th Deputy Director of the Central Intelligence Agency under Jimmy Carter. You don't think that guy had any influence, do you? Nah. Juju Chang, journalist and reporter for ABC News. Bill Clinton, 42nd President of the United States. Hillary Rodham Clinton, former First Lady of the United States, former First United States Senator from New York, 67th United States Secretary of State under Barack Obama, and soon to be the candidate for the 2016 election for the United States of America to be the first female president. Isn't that cute? Henry Cisneros, 10th United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Bill Clinton. Let's see, he affects policy regarding everything from guns to water to housing to purchasing to finance. Oh, I just must be paranoid. Mario Cuomo, Democratic politician, 52nd Governor of New York. Michael Crow, President of Arizona State University. Katie Couric, she just works for CBS and NBC, and she's a journalist and a talk show host. She can't possibly have any influence. What are you worried about? Stephen Cohen, the professor of Russian studies at New York University. We're running out of time. You know what? I'm having so much fun. I think I'm going to bore you for the next two segments with this list because, well, it's important. The truth is, America, if you don't know who the enemy is, you can never be successful. Guess who told us that? Sun Tzu. Yeah. You remember that guy who wrote a book called The Art of War? Yeah, that guy. By the way, he was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, interestingly enough. Listen, find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can find us also on Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Please hit the like button. Also, you can find us at Spreaker.com /user/America's Voice Now. And please hit the join button on there. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. Boy, we're having just so much fun this morning, looking at all the people who have betrayed us, sold us down the river, cut our throats. I mean, the truth is, this information is out there for anybody to see, but why is it nobody knows? I mean, I don't mean to sound snarky or anything, but why is it that nobody knows who all these people are and what roles they play? Why is this the best-kept secret in America? Come to think of it, why is this the best-kept secret in the world? Well, let's go on and have some more fun. William Daley, 24th White House Chief of Staff under President Obama, 32nd Secretary of Commerce under Bill Clinton. He didn't last very long in the Obama administration. He wasn't willing to toe the line, I guess, the right way. Always tied, by the way, to the Dailies of Chicago. Oh, that group, they're so funny. Catherine Wasserman Davis, American philanthropist. That means she gives away a lot of money. Kenneth Duberstein, 13th Chief of Staff under Ronald Reagan. What did I tell you about Ronald Reagan and his entire cabinet? Oh, that's right. They were all members of the CFR. I forgot. Yeah. Joseph Duffy, an academic and an educator. Chris Dodd, former United States Senator from Connecticut. Isn't he the guy who wrote the Dodd-Frank bill? Oh, yeah, silly me. You mean the one that said that banks could not play games with certain investments that Congress just relieved? Yeah, that one. Thomas Donahue, former Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. Now, that group, they don't hold any sway over politics. I mean, they don't really have any influence. They're just the AFL-CIO. William Donaldson, former chairman of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Let's see, that's the group that investigates anybody who would defraud anyone with securities and exchanges on Wall Street, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, the Dow. Interesting. Because all of these companies are monitored, overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So isn't it funny that William Donaldson, the former chairman of the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, would sit on the Council on Foreign Relations, which is a membership made up of all the companies that he's supposed to regulate and monitor so that they don't defraud the country. I wonder if that would present a conflict of interest. Michael Dukakis. We already know who he is. And he didn't win anyway. William Donaldson. I'm sorry, I gave you William Donaldson already. John Edwards, former Democratic U.S. Senator, cheater. From North Carolina, 2004 Democratic Vice Presidential nominee, guy who cheated on his wife while she was having cancer. Yeah, that guy. Carl Eikenberry, United States Army General, former ambassador to Afghanistan. Ari Emanuel, the head of Endeavor Agency. Also tied, I might add, to Rahm Emanuel, the brother of, the mayor of Chicago, former chief of staff for the White House. Sorry, I left my coffee at home this morning, and I'm dying here. Let's see. Roger Ferguson, former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve. You think the Federal Reserve has any influence on monetary policy in the United States of America? You think? Dianne Feinstein, our personal Frankenstein from California. Yeah, she's the one who says that if she had her way, no one in the United States of America would own a firearm except law enforcement and military. She's a real peach, isn't she? Yeah. She's had more plastic surgery than, well, Dow has. Plastic. Bernard Ferrari, Dean, Johns Hopkins University and the Carey Business School. Let's see. So if they don't graduate from Kennedy School of Business and Kennedy School of Government or Harvard Business School, which is also a member, they might graduate from the Johns Hopkins University Carey School of Business. You think? No, come on. You guys are just being paranoid here, right? Yeah. Bill Frist, Republican politician, former U.S. Senate Majority Leader of the United States Senate. So let's see, why would senators and congressmen, including the guy as powerful as the leader of the entire Senate, the majority in the Senate no less, right? Robert Gates, Director of Central Intelligence under Bush. He was also the Secretary of Defense under Bush and Obama for a little while. Pamela Gann, the president of Claremont McKenna College and the former dean of Duke University School of Law. You don't think they might have influenced law students on how they should treat things like the Constitution, do you? Nah, come on. You're just being silly. Robert George, professor at Princeton University and a theologian and a philosopher. He must be a smart fellow, huh? I don't know him, but he must be smart. David Geffen, the president of Universal Music Group. Leslie Gelb, former journalist for the New York Times. Dick Gephardt, 22nd Majority Leader of the United States House of Representatives. Again with that House and Senate thing. Sam Geddes, well, I don't even know how to say it, Geddison, former Democratic Party United States Congressman from Connecticut. Alan Greenspan, 13th Chairman of the Federal Reserve. Now, you know, old Alan, he's a tricky guy. Back when he was friends with Ayn Rand, who some of you may remember wrote Atlas Shrugged, among many other titanic, monstrous, wonderful books, he used to be an advocate for the gold system, backing our fiat currency of toilet paper. I mean, money. And then, isn't it funny? He got involved in the banking, in the Federal Reserve and in the banking industry, and he was brought on as a major advisor. He was actually involved in investment banking, and then he moved from investment banking to become the chairman of the Federal Reserve. You know what's really funny? When Alan Greenspan left, he went back to Wall Street and the major investment banks. And lately, you know, he just wrote a book. And you know, isn't it funny? He came full circle and now he thinks that money ought to be backed by gold again. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, a bigger betrayal than that? Really, Mr. Greenspan? Really? So let's see. You started your career by saying money should be backed by gold and the Federal Reserve shouldn't create something from nothing and then hold us all accountable for it and charge us interest on it. Then you became the chairman of that group and you wholeheartedly accepted everything that they did. Then you brought us into the worst financial crisis we've had since the 1929 or 1928 crash. Then you scooted out of there after saddling the country with $1 trillion worth of bailouts for all your buddies and your partners. And now you've come full circle and you're back to the point where we ought to really back up our money with gold. Kind of funny, that. You know, I hate a traitor. I really do. I just cannot stand somebody who would betray their country, their people, for money or for power or influence. You know, call me a stickler for stuff like that. But, you know, if somebody were to say to me, hey, listen, Evans, here's the deal. You want to grow this America's Voice Now thing, and you really are anxious to get this thing off the ground because you want to influence and help a lot of people understand what's really going on in our country. And what we're going to do is we're going to back you with some money. But you got to change the way that you talk about this or that. And you can't say this and you can't say that. You know what I would say to them? Hey, thanks very much, fellas, but no thanks. I'll just remain a flea on the elephant's ass. And I'll just have to keep biting very hard. No, I know I'm funding this out of my pocket, and I spend all this money out of my own personal funds to keep this thing alive. And I know that, every dime I have goes into it to buy every little piddling thing that we need to buy. The big mic and the camera and the this and the that and the arm and the widget and the Zazu and the Wazoo. But I just can't get to the point where I'm willing to say I'm going to sacrifice my family and my future children and my grandchildren, I should say, who I don't even know yet, just for a little comfort now. It's just not in me, folks. Maurice Greenberg, who was the former chairman and the CEO of AIG, who, funny, Alan Greenspan bought them out and then gave them the whole company back, and they paid us back in some little small measure, but Peter Goldmark Jr., former CEO of New York Port Authority, president of the Rockefeller Foundation, and the publisher of the International Herald Tribune. David Gergen, advisor to Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Ronald Reagan, and Bill Clinton, and a commentator for CNN. You don't think he might have had some influence somewhere, do you? Mikhail Gorbachev, former president of the USSR. Roy Goodman, former Republican member of the United States New York State Senate. Newt Gingrich. Good old Newt. He's out there advocating like he's a real true patriot. But he's really just a controlled opposition. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, United States Supreme Court Justice. There we go with that doggone Supreme Court again. How is it that these folks sit on and are members of the Council on Foreign Relations, yet sit on the highest court in the land and make influential decisions that affect all of us? Somehow, I smell conflict of interest. Brian Grazer, producer and co-founder of Imagine Entertainment. That's the group that influences all of our little boys and girls because they make all the movies that our kids watch. All those funny cartoons and stuff. Yeah. Richard Haas, former State Department official. What did I tell you about the State Department? Every member who's influential, and any member who's anybody in the State Department, has always come from the Council on Foreign Relations. Isn't that funny? David Harris, director of the American Jewish Committee. There it is again. Funny, I'm beginning to wonder if maybe the conflicts of interest that I'm recognizing here and the tenuous strings and the spider webs that I'm drawing together don't in fact make an entire picture. Is it possible you're seeing the same? Michael Hayden. Oh, you're going to love Michael Hayden. He's United States Air Force General, 15th Director of the National Security Agency under Bill Clinton, and the 20th Director of the CIA under George W. Bush. He was the guy who started the entire NSA spying thing. You didn't know that, did you? Yeah. In fact, I watched an interview with him last night in which he said Snowden was the problem, not really the NSA. Heather Higgins, women's advocate, chairman of the Independent Women Focus and Forum, and president of the Randolph Foundation. That's another one of those groups that, spends money and gives money to like all these organizations out there, philanthropic and all that. Chris Hines, heir to the H.J. Heinz Company ketchup fortune. Also, I might add, the brother of the wife of John Kerry, our current Secretary of State. Man, how incestuous. These people are almost like brother and sister marrying and having babies. Carla Anderson Hills, 5th United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Gerald Ford, and the 10th United States Trade Representative. Wow. Kim Holmes, foreign policy and defense expert. Douglas Holtz-Aiken, an economist. William Hodge, or Hodge, American journalist formerly from the New York Times. Malcolm Honline, Vice Chair of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. So let's see. He's the aggregator of the aggregators of all the Jewish organizations. He's the Conference of the Presidents, excuse me. This title is killing me. The conference, he's the chairman, or vice chairman. How many layers of hierarchy can you get? He's the vice chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. They're all plural. So the major American Jewish organizations have all of their presidents gather together under this organization as the Conference of Presidents, and he's the vice chair of that conference. Just layers upon layers upon layers of incest. Unbelievable. Katrina Vander Hovel, editor of The Nation, wife of Stephen Cohen, daughter of William Vander Hovel, and her father, William Vander Hovel, diplomat and international lawyer, and the father of the aforementioned Katrina. Angelina Jolie, the UN's goodwill ambassador to the world. Isn't that sweet? Vernon Jordan, advisor to President Bill Clinton. Nancy Johnson, former U.S. Congresswoman from Connecticut. Woody Johnson, we can't call him congressman. We have to call them congresswomen. We don't want to offend anybody. Woody Johnson, owner of the New York Jets and the heir to Johnson & Johnson Medical. That guy's got some money, huh? Sheila Johnson, businesswoman and the president of the Washington Mystics. Sports teams and the CFR, I just don't get it. Oh, that's right. If we keep all these men occupied, their testosterone won't overflow and want to take the country back. I hadn't thought of that. So let's see. If we can build some of these magnificent, huge, monstrous stadiums at taxpayer expense to the tune of anywhere between, let's see, $100 and $1 billion a city, we can get the taxpayers to pay for it, and then we can give the people bread and circuses. And just like it worked in Rome, it'll keep them calm. What do you think? I think that's a brilliant idea. You know what? They will actually do stuff like memorize sports scores instead of the Constitution. They will recognize a football or a baseball player or a hockey player or a basketball player from 20 or 30, maybe even 100 years ago. But they won't be able to name 3 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. In fact, they won't be able to name 1. A bet. They might remember John Hancock because he put his signature so big up there. What do you think? So let's see. If we just take professional sports and we push it in schools so that every young boy thinks, you know, if I could just be a sports star, I could be a billionaire and millionaire. I could live rich and famous. I'd have all the beautiful girls around me. I'm just going to put my life into that. The heck with that stuff about history. I don't care about any of that. And I can play fantasy football. I'm going to spend hours poring over that paperwork trying to figure out who exactly I want on my fantasy team. Because, you know, that's far more important than looking at police brutality or worrying about whether or not our country is falling into government-sponsored terrorism against our own people. You know, that's more important than trying to figure out what really happened over in Benghazi or why the IRS is being used as a weapon of mass destruction against the American population and an enemies list of anybody who's against President Obama, the president who actually doesn't really have a birth certificate, faked it, it's fraudulent. And in addition to that, he defrauded and created a false draft card, which they don't call draft anymore. I've forgotten what the heck they call it now. and actually applied for taxpayer funding to attend university as a foreign exchange student. But now swears he was born in, Hawaii and stuff. But that sports is so important. I'm telling you, that's really more important than any of that stuff. Robert Kagan co-founded Project for the New American Century. Man, you want to see a group that's got influence, go look at the New American Century group. Project for the New American Century. Just go type it in. I'm not even going to tell you what it's about. You just go scare the poop out of yourself. Nancy Kasselbaum, former Republican senator from Kansas, wife of Howard Baker. You remember this is so incestuous, ladies and gentlemen. Thomas Keene Sr., Republican politician, 48th governor of New Jersey. John Kerry, former United States Senator from Massachusetts, Secretary of State under Barack Obama, party nominee for the presidency. Vanessa Kerry, a doctor of medicine, a liberal activist, and the daughter of none other than John Kerry. Henry Kissinger. Let's read his enamored title. 8th National Security Advisor under Richard Nixon and the 56th United States Secretary of State under Presidents Nixon and Ford. Isn't it funny he opened up the door to China? And isn't it funny that he was a National Security Advisor under Reagan, but he was also the Secretary of State under Nixon and Ford? What did I tell you about every Secretary of State since Roosevelt? I know you weren't listening, but I'm telling you again. Every Secretary of State. Joe Klein, Time magazine columnist. Richard Kogan, the CEO of Shearing Plow from 96 to 2003, the board member of Colgate-Palmolive and the Bank of New York Mellon. By the way, if you don't believe it, the vast majority of these people are so incestuous that they sit on each other's boards. So, you could have one guy who's the chairman or the CEO of Shearing Plow, but he also sits on the board of Colgate-Palmolive and the Bank of New York Mellon and all of these other groups. And so there's a little closed group of elitists. In Russia, they used to call that an oligarchy. Paul Krugman, an economist and a columnist for the New York Times. Now, Mr. Krugman is the guy who keeps telling us that even though we are bankrupt, we must spend more money so we can buy ourselves out of debt. Yeah, that's the same guy. Charles Krauthammer, columnist for the Washington Post and a political commentator at Fox News. Now, I've heard Mr. Krauthammer say some pretty accurate, what I would perceive to be accurate things. But I've also heard him demonize Mr. Snowden and many others. And again, we're out of time. Oh, man, it's killing me. All right, we're going to take a break. But when we come back, you know what? Nothing else matters. Because unless, like Mr. Sun Tzu said to us, we know who our enemy is, we are destined to be defeated by it. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, if I haven't proven to you yet that the Council on Foreign Relations is the number one enemy, the most exigent threat in America today, you're just not listening. We'll be right back. Okay, here we are in our fourth and final segment of our last show for 2013. And I got to tell you, I wanted to talk about other stuff this morning. I wanted to talk about, other topics, including the NSA and stuff like that. But you know what? I'm going to send 2013 out with a bang. What is the bang? I'm revealing to you the government-sponsored heads of terrorism that are terrorizing the United States of America, you, your family, your industries, your businesses. And, they don't like this kind of attention. They just don't. And I haven't even tipped the scale yet, folks. I mean, this list of people that are members here that have influence on so many areas. It's so deep that when you talk about the CFR and you say, these people are the ones who are running the country, most people say to you, come on, man, get that tinfoil hat off your head. There was a guy who once said, if you make the lie big enough and you tell it consistently and often enough, everyone will begin to believe it. He got an entire nation to stand behind him and line up to do what most of us would consider heinous. His name was Goebbels. Okay. Zalmay Khalilzad, 26th ambassador to the United Nations under George Bush. Philip Lader, diplomat and chairman of the WPP group. Richard Lariviere, scholar and president of the University of Oregon. Jim Leach, former U.S. Congressman, Iowa, chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities under Obama. Yeah, that's the group that just gave away $1 million to study pornography. Not quite sure what we were supposed to get out of that, but... Jim Lehrer, journalist, former anchor for PBS. Wait a second now. PBS is public broadcasting. I have always seen PBS, and NPR for that matter, to really kind of toe the line under the administration. To always carry a really, really progressive, liberal, leftist kind of ideology. Isn't it funny that Jim Lehrer, a journalist and a former anchor for PBS, who does specials now on government, is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations? Joe Lieberman, oh, that guy, the guy with the jowls, yeah. He's the guy who was first a Democrat, and then he became a Republican, then he called himself an independent. He can't quite figure out which party he's in because, the way the wind blows, you just got to keep changing sides. Louis Libby, the attorney, the former chief of staff of Vice President
Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney. Darth Vader.
Herbert London, academic, conservative activist, former dean of Gallatin School of Individualized Study.
I want to be a member of the Gallatin School of Individualized Study. I am individually studying how I can influence America.
Nigel Lithgow, television producer. Fred Malik, businessman and former president of Marriott Hotels and Northwest Airlines. Sits on half a dozen different boards around the country. David Malpass, an economist for the Republican Party politician. John McCain. You mean John McCain, the guy who left his cojones back in Vietnam? This is the same guy, by the way, who just voted for the budget. Has betrayed America with virtually every vote he's had. He's wearing frilly girls' panties every time he walks up to Obama. Yeah, that same John McCain. Bud McFarlane, 13 National Security Advisor under Ronald Reagan. Another one of them cabinet members, folks. William Green Miller, United States Ambassador to the Ukraine under Bill Clinton. George Mitchell, 17th Senate Majority Leader of the United States Senate. Walter Mondale, 42nd Vice President of the United States of America. Robert Mossberger, businessman and the son of Robert Mossberger Sr. Les Moonves, the President and the Chief Executive Officer of CBS, Communist Broadcasting System. Bill Moyers, former press secretary to Lyndon Johnson and a public commentator for none other than PBS, Public Broadcasting Service. Isn't that funny? PBS actually stands for Propaganda Broadcasting Service, but they don't want you to know that. Langhorne Motley, former diplomat and State Department official. Now, with a name like Langhorne Motley, I mean, I don't mean to make fun, folks, but I think I would have gotten somehow to a judge who I could influence to change my name to, something a little easier. I bet Langhorne got his butt whooped routinely in school with a name like that. And he's dragging it out and carrying it out on the rest of us for the remainder of his natural life. But he's in power now, baby, so you could just forget it. David Mulford, former United States ambassador to India and the current vice chairman international of Credit Suisse. United States ambassador to India and the vice chairman international of Credit Suisse, who funds most of the United States corporations to move their technical support and all the rest of that over to India. I am very happy to meet you. Thank you for calling. What exactly can I do for you today, sir? Thank you very much for calling. We are very happy to have you. We are very happy to have all of your industry here, and we are going to make the best of it. Rupert Murdoch, chairman, founder, CEO of News Corporation and Fox News. Heather Nauert, journalist and an anchor for Fox News. Janet Napolitano, United States Secretary of Homeland Security under Obama and the 21st governor of Arizona. If there was ever a female Darth Vader, I'd kind of think Janet Napolitano would fit that bill. What do you think? John Negroponte, former United States Deputy Secretary of State. There's that Secretary of State thing again. And the former Director of National Intelligence under George Bush. Yeah, these were the guys that started the NSA thing, Joseph Nye, an academic. No, he's Nye the science guy. The guy that is constantly telling your kid, well, I'll let you decide that for yourself. Sandra Day O'Connor, former United States Supreme Court Justice. There's that doggone SCOTUS again. Why is it that every member of SCOTUS is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations? Stan O'Neill, former chief executive officer and chairman of the board of Merrill Lynch. George Pataki, a Republican politician of 53rd governor of New York. Henry Paulson, 74th United States Treasury Secretary under George W. Bush, and the processor of a $1 trillion giveaway to all of the banks that he represents. And by the way, Paulson came from the banking industry and has left and gone back to the banking industry. Robert Pastor, the National Security Advisor and the son-in-law of Robert McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense. David Petraeus. Now, isn't that funny? Davy boy here, he was the United States Army General and the former head of CENTCOM, and he's the 22nd director of the CIA who recently had to leave under a scandal involving none other than somebody other than his wife. I wonder who David pissed off. Peter Peterson, United States Secretary of Commerce under Nixon. Peter Peterson is a very, very dangerous guy. Go look him up. Peter G. Peterson. Yeah, go look him up. Steve Piasnik. Pizzanik is how I always pronounce it. He's a former State Department official, 9/11 conspiracy theorist. He's a co-writer, by the way, with, what's his name, who wrote The Hunt for Red October. And I don't know what the heck he's doing on there. Maybe he's conspiring. He is, after all, a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. Katie Pilgrim, the journalist and an anchor at Communist News Network. Richard Pipes, the academic father of founder-director of the Middle East Forum. And his father, Daniel Pipes, of course, which is the academic writer, historian, and son of Richard Pipes. I'm sorry, crossways. Norman Podhoretz, former editor-in-chief of Commentary, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, Project for the New American Century. Remember what I told you about that group called the Project for the New American Century? Yeah, go look them up. When you're done reading about those guys, your blood's going to boil. Steve Poizner, California businessman and a Republican politician. Roman Papaduik, former United States ambassador to the Ukraine, executive director to the George Bush Presidential Library Foundation. So after he was all done raping America, he got a nice cushy job as the Presidential Library director. Gotta love that. Colin Powell, 65th United States Secretary of State under Bush. There's that Secretary of State thing. Under Bush 43, 16th National Security Advisor under Reagan, and the 12th Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Bush 41. And recently, a complete sycophant for Obama. Isn't that funny? Tom Petrie, Republican congressman from Wisconsin. Priscilla Presley, former actress and former chairwoman of the board of the Elvis Presley Enterprises. I don't know what she's doing on there. Charles Prince, former chief executive officer of Citigroup. Now, if there were a Darth Vader of companies, it might look like Citigroup, huh?
We have assumed control. We have assumed control. Resistance is futile.
Jennifer Rabb, the president of Hunter College. Janet Reno, 78th U.S. Attorney General under Clinton, and the creator of the burning of, 67 children in Waco? Yeah. The murder of them? Yes. Responsible. 100% guilty. Should have been charged with treason, prosecuted, and then, under conviction, hung for her crime. Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State under Bush. Dan Rather, journalist and formerly anchor at CBS. Charlie Rangel, United States Democratic congressman from New York City. Now, I just love Charlie. He's a guy who hasn't paid his taxes. He's been a congressman now for about 47 years or something, And he lives in Harlem, and he dresses in only the finest suits. And he owns a lot of property in New York, and here's the deal. So I rent this property out, and I don't have to follow, all the stuff that everybody else has to follow. Like rent subsidization and all of that. And I don't pay my taxes nowhere. Charlie just kills me. Every time I hear him, I want to cringe. I've been told I do a fairly good Charlie Rangel, by the way. Charlie Rangel. Alice Rivlin, economist, former U.S. cabinet member. David Rockefeller Jr. David Rockefeller IV. I'm sorry, John D. Rockefeller, United States Democratic Party senator from West Virginia, currently sitting there. And by the way, he sits on almost every major committee in the Senate. And he was the former governor of West Virginia. Charlie Rose, PBS journalist and early show anchor. PBS, isn't that the propaganda broadcasting? Yes, that's right. That's what it is. Let's see. Liz Rosenberg, novelist, poet, and columnist for the Boston Globe. All of these columnists and writers and journalists who all influence what America thinks. And they, it's funny, they have the ability to influence people by how they write about a story and the way that they couch the characters and the players in the story. And it's funny because when people see something in writing or they see it in the news and it comes from a trusted-looking face like, maybe Charlie Rose, that they begin to believe what they're told because this is a face we see in front of us every day, and he's always been fair and truthful and honest with us before. Robert Rubin, 70th Secretary of Treasury under Bill Clinton. Haim Saban, founder of Saban Capital Group. Jeffrey Sachs, American economist. Diane Sawyer, ABC News journalist. There's that ABC News. Isn't it funny so far we've seen ABC, CBS, NBC, Time Warner, Communist News Network, and Fox News. And by the way, those same groups own all the major newspapers in the country. Stephen Schwebel, jurist, former judge on the International Court of Justice. Now, isn't it funny that we have been slowly but surely delineating our sovereignty over to international courts of justice, both for criminal and civil issues? I wonder why that would be happening. I mean, why would the United States want to put ourselves up underneath the jurisdiction of international courts of law that really don't follow our Constitution, don't believe in it, don't want it for their own country because it would limit their ability to be tyrants to their own people, and allow everybody to own a gun so that they could fight back? Michael Shifter, academic and president of the Inter-American Dialogue. Well, if we want some inter-American dialogue, Mr. Shifter, you sound shifty. What we might try to do is make sure that the people who are giving us the information and the news in our world today aren't all members of the same little clique. Dan Senar, Sr., Senar, I don't know how you say it, former foreign policy advisor to George Bush, former Fox News foreign policy analyst. Amita Shales, Bloomberg News columnist and a historian. Timothy Shriver, former chairman and the CEO of the Special Olympics. David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA. There's those sports teams again. John Spratt. Isn't it funny that the NBA happens to be, an And by the way, the NBA, the NFL, and also the baseball, whatever the heck it's called, they are all not-for-profit organizations. Did you know that? Now, wait a minute. Come on. The NFL is not-for-profit? Yes. The NFL is not-for-profit. Please. You got to be kidding me. John Spratt, former Democratic United States Congressman from South Carolina. If you don't believe me about the major sports organizations being not-for-profit, go look it up for yourself. Never, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, take my word for anything. I am just a guy who's out here talking because everybody else seems to have no brass to do so. I know they're afraid, and I am too. But we can't just sit here and idly watch our nation go down the drain while all of us are tossed into slavery and abject torture, should we? I mean, don't you have children you're worried about? Karenna Gore Schiff, daughter of Al Gore, the man who invented the internet, or at least so he claims. Olympia Snowe, Republican senator from Maine. Brent Scowcroft, 9th and 17th United States National Security Advisors under Gerald Ford and George Bush. George Shultz, 60th United States Secretary of State. Oh, there's that pesky DOS again. Under Reagan, 62nd United States Secretary of the Treasury, and the 11th United States Secretary of Labor under Richard Nixon. Isn't it amazing how many slots that guy fills? Frederick Smith, the CEO and the founder of FedEx. Andrew Sorkin, business journalist for New York Times and CNBC. Now, isn't CNBC the organization out there that informs all the investors? Oh, that's right. Walter Slocum, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. You mean he's making policy and he's backslapping with the rest of these traders? George Soros, currency speculator, investor, businessman, monster. Leslie Stahl, CBS News journalist. Donna Shalala, United States Secretary of Health and Human Services under Clinton and the president of the University of Miami. Eduard Shevardnadze, second president of Georgia. Eric Shinseki, United States Secretary of Veterans Affairs under Obama and the Chief of Staff of the United States Army under Clinton and Bush. You ever wonder why our military doesn't stand up? There you go. Adlai Stevenson, former Democratic U.S. Senator from Illinois and the son of Adlai Stevenson II. George Stephanopoulos, White House Press Secretary under Bill Clinton, Good Morning America anchor, and host of This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Lawrence Silberman, United States federal judge. Now, wait a minute. It's bad enough that all the Supreme Court justices sit on the panel, but why is it that just general plain Jane federal judges are sitting up there? Robert Silvers, editor of New York Times Review of Books. Ever wonder why certain books make it big and others don't? Well, Robert Silvers has something to do with that. He's the editor of the New York Review of Books. You'd think he might influence which gets printed and which ones make it and which ones don't? Stansfield Turner, United States Navy Admiral and the 12th Director of the CIA under Carter. Doug Turner, Republican Party operative, politician, and public relations operative. Basically a tick that's grown fat on the blood of Americans. Richard Thornborough, 76th Attorney General of the United States under Reagan and Bush and the 76th Governor of Pennsylvania. John Thornton, Chairman of Brookings Institution, academic, former president of Goldman Sachs. Holy smoke. Fred Thompson, attorney, actor, radio talk show host, former Republican U.S. Senator from Tennessee. Yeah, you know Fred, that trusty old guy that, everybody trusts. He really works for the opposition. Shirley Temple, actress and diplomat. Frances Townsend, former U.S. Secretary, Homeland Security advisor. Kathleen Turner, Kennedy Townsend, member of the Kennedy family, former Democratic Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. Tom Vilsack, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture and the former governor of Iowa. Now, isn't that funny that Vilsack, who's the Department, the 30th Secretary of the United States of USDA under Obama, he sits on the Council on Foreign Relations, where they affect everything from our commerce to how much money we spend. You see, folks, it's just so pathetically shameful. Paul Volcker, chairman of the Federal Reserve, or former. Peter Wallison, White House counsel to Ronald Reagan, former lawyer to Nelson Rockefeller. Jeez whiz, look at the dirt in that deal. Barbara Walters, ABC News journalist. Vin Weber, former U.S. Republican congressman from Minnesota. Steve Weinberg, American physicist. Juliana Glover Weiss, American lobbyist. With a name like Juliana Glover, hyphenated, Weiss. John Whitehead, I can't imagine who she fronts for. John Whitehead, chairman of the World Trade Memorial Center Foundation. Former Secretary of State under Reagan and a former Goldman Sachs chairman. Tell me that ain't incestuous, folks. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Christine Todd Whitman, governor of New Jersey, administrator of the EPA. Shirley Williams, Baroness Williams of Crosby, British member of Parliament. Richard Williamson, diplomat, lawyer, founder, chairman of the Republican Party of Illinois. Oprah Winfrey. Paul Wolfenson, former president of the World Bank. Paul Wolfowitz, president of the World Bank, former U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense under Bush. James Woolsey, director of the Central Intelligence under Clinton. Dov Zeikheim, academic and Department of Defense official under Reagan and Bush. Paul Azan, journalist, former anchor at Fox News and Communist News Network. Fox News, by the way, should be pronounced faux news. F-A-U-X, like faux fur. Yeah. James Zogby, academic, political commentator, and pollster. Robert Zoellick, 11th president of the World Bank. Notable historic members. We're going to run out of time. We're down to 3 minutes. Listen, folks, I'm telling you, every member, and by the way, Heidi Nelson Cruz, an investment banker and the wife of Senator Ted Cruz, she's a member. Monica Crowley, former Nixon aide, radio host and a columnist and a Fox News contributor, she's a member. Did you know that? No, you didn't. Alan Dulles, former director of the CIA, and John Foster Dulles, 52nd Secretary of State of the United States under Eisenhower. If you ever want to meet two guys, look at John Foster Dulles and Alan Dulles. Two of the men who led us into this communist/socialist/fascist world we are now employing and doubling or tripling and quadrupling down upon. Let me tell you, people, if you haven't read, I talked to you about this yesterday, that reading is the one area that you can really make a difference in your life. And in what you know and who you know and how and where and what and why. And I'm going to stress it again. If there's only two things that you make a resolution for this year. One, and it should be the overarching concept of resistance. Resistance in any way, shape, any form, any manner, whatever it takes. And then read to educate yourself. Don't expect television and YouTube videos to do it for you. If you are one of those people that believes that, YouTube videos are going to give you all the education you need, you are sadly, sorely mistaken. You are doing no better than anyone who is sitting there swallowing every word coming out of ABC, CBS, NBC, MSLSD, Fox News, CNN, and every other organization out there. I'm telling you, don't take anybody's word for anything. Do your own homework. We're going to wrap for the day. We're down to our last few seconds. I wish everybody a healthy and wholesome holiday weekend, or a couple of days now. Be careful out there. If they ask you for a swab of your mouth or a breathalyzer test, just say, am I free to go? Am I free to go? Am I free to go? Do not submit. Resistance is not futile. You've been listening to America's Voice now. Ladies and gentlemen, 2014 should be our year of resistance. Education, information, motivation, and activation. My name is Michael Evans. I'm signing off for 2013 for America's Voice Now.